Welcome to Hickory Street Podcast. I'm Michael Zamora, and we are here with Justin Longoria.
Yes.
Hi, Justin. I met you. I guess it was like close to 3 years ago now.
At least, yeah.
Close to 3. You were playing with what's her name? Eva Borman. Evie Borman.
Yeah, she was like Evie.
Yeah. I think you were playing bass at the time? Right?
Oh, no, she plays bass, and I'm on guitar.
You were playing guitar. Okay, cool. And that was at Spinster Records that I saw you that time.
One of those. Cool.
Yeah, I was there with my longtime friend Gabriel Jordan.
Yes.
I'm sure you know. I've been friends with him since I was 18. He was like 17. He was still in high school. We've been friends for a long time.
That's very cool.
And he was playing with someone there. I can't remember who it was, but yeah. So
it must be. He was playing with me.
Oh, that's right.
It was that show. That was our last show.
Okay, yes.
First and last.
Oh, that was really, you guys only played that one show.
That was it. Yeah. Alicia quit, or Evie quit. She said about a week before that show, she was like, "This is it." I don't know what wasn't working for her. I never got a straight answer, but yeah, she quit. And then I tried to keep it together with Gabe, but we had a hard time meeting practice. And I realize now, in looking back on it, I tried to just keep going and just keep doing the songs I was doing just without Alicia. And I look back on it now, and I was like, Gabe and I had a kind of a thing that clicked where we could jam and stuff, and like we should have just taken that and ran with it and made new stuff. And I think everybody would have stuck together. And I also had we found Lena Beatrix, and she played one gig with us, and that's when we really jammed. And I might have said it at that gig, but I really thought about it afterwards. But I couldn't get anybody back together for practice after that, so I just went back to being a one-man band.
So that was going to be my next question: is what you're up to now? So you're doing some solo stuff then, or?
Oh, ever since then, yeah, I've been doing that. I played a few gigs that way, and kind of bounced around a little bit. I always wanted to try to help be a part of what my friend Eli does. It was Super Mook. We did, most of what he did was
with who? Super Mook?
Super Mook is what
Super Mook.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if you maybe haven't seen him, but it's like a kind of a theatrical kind of thing. There's a lot of props and all the songs are based on things like
stories.
Yeah, they're all like funny little stories that Eli made. It all comes from Eli's really special brain.
That's cool. I really enjoy storytelling in songs. It's sort of like the basis of what contemporary modern music was,
right.
I mean, it's just, in a way, like there's a folk element to a lot of the earliest contemporary tunes. So.
Absolutely. yeah. So I guess what I'm up to now is trying to figure out where exactly to go. I've been spending a lot of time, I use a looper and a drum machine, and I've always wanted to kind of make that part of the thing, not just play the backing tracks or be one of those improv guys where you just track it one after the other in front of everybody and you make a little fun thing. Either of those don't appeal to me. And I still want to use that as a song, as a technique in my performing, but I don't want to be either of those.
Gotcha.
I don't know why I don't feel very confident in being able to nail my loops in one try in front of, especially with people watching, and you're it's a show. Yeah. And I've been to a lot of things where people do that kind of thing, and it's a lot more fun to do than it is to watch.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen it go south live, and I'm the kind of listener that will stick around and just keep listening despite whatever technical fumbles happen.
Learn from anything,
yeah. But there's a lot of people that just don't have the patience for it, and I get it. Especially now, in this day and age where everything's digested, sort of in I think it was, I read an article a long time ago about the changing attention span of listeners in the modern age, and the rule of thumb for A&R reps of labels, spanning, between like the 70s and the 90s was like capture your audience in the first 15 seconds of the song. I was just say
30. Yeah.
Like the first 15 seconds. Yeah. And that has gotten even shorter to now it's like the standard is 8 seconds. So the listener's attention span is getting shorter. And I think that kind of represents like the songs that are being written these days too. We're writing much shorter songs, like even pop songs are less than 3 minutes, and like that's kind of normal. But that's kind of how it was. Like talk about like the Beatles days or like the Elvis days, and the songs were really short. So
yeah, they had a very set thing they were doing. They're like everything is this, and
right, exactly.
And everybody did it, and they made a lot of money and. They're all, we built on that, and somebody built on that, and eventually it got to us.
Yeah,
I'm not that old. my peer group was the Beatles. That was what I started out like as a little kid in the 70s. That was my first thing. I liked the Beatles.
Listening to the Beatles, yeah.
I think I listened to a lot of oldies until I discovered like they call it college radio. Well, also Prince. I've been a Prince fan since I can remember, since MTV existed. I saw him on there, and that was it.
Yeah, his image was pretty shocking to the world, I think.
I had a dream about it. I had a very specific dream about being on stage with him in the 1999 videos, where it's all blown out and they're wearing like a lot of color and there's just tons going on and people are really far apart. I was on that stage in a dream I had. I was standing next to the women with the keyboards and I was like, I'm like in love or something. I remember that's like my first, besides seeing the videos, that's my first memory. Really? And then Purple Rain came out, and I was just hooked. It was all him from then on, and
Yeah, Purple Rain that's a ballad. You know what I mean? Like that is it's a pretty like long song, but
actually, it's 6 or 7 minutes, maybe 9. It's really long.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I know because I obviously didn't grow up in that era, but my dad listened to quite a bit of Prince, and that song in particular he played all the time in the car. And I just remember thinking like, this song is really dramatic and really long. Like, how is this popular? Like, I just couldn't get it, But
I see that. Yeah. It was a moment. Like, people were kind of like that in that time. In like '84, everybody their hair was big and they had shoulder pads and everything was pretty keyed up, so it was just a little different time, but the big song from that was "When Doves Cry." That was the big hit, and you bought the album and listened to the other things, and I don't think maybe they made a video for it. It was kind of popular. It was the big closer of the movie.
Yeah. That's something kind of cool to talk about, and maybe you can kind of elaborate on your experience with this, because we obviously come from very different generations. I don't know if you're considered a baby boomer.
I'm Gen X.
You're Gen X?
Yeah,
okay, so
my parents are boomers, and I'm Gen X.
Okay.
I guess my siblings are all millennials. That's kind of how I found. Maybe Graham, I have a brother who's 7 years younger than me, and he's probably a boomer, a Gen X too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my dad is Gen X too, so you're in the same
age.
So you're, okay. Yeah, well, and I've had conversations like this with my dad, but I'm curious, I've never asked him this, but I'm curious to like figure out how the transition between hearing a hit song on the radio and then going out and buying the album to listen to the rest of that artist's material has in a way like changed the way that you digest music now in the modern age? I mean, do you still, whenever you hear a single from an artist, like try to, even go out of your way to listen to the entire album, or do you just hear the single, appreciate the single, and move on?
It's really dependent these days. But I traditionally am a person I like that song and I buy that album, and then I buy all 4 other albums that they had before that, or I'm one of those
before you
guys.
Listen to them. Yeah.
No, well, I know I'm going to enjoy it, and in most cases I do. And I don't know. It's like right now, back then it was like you saw it on MTV or you heard it on the radio in the car all the time, like driving around with your parents, and then you'd go to the music store and you'd buy there wasn't really much of an option. If you wanted that song, you bought the album. And at my time, it was tapes. Everybody was buying tapes. I grew up on vinyl, and I love vinyl, and always will. But that 80s, it was tapes, then CDs. Real quick transition into CDs, and they were cool as hell. I thought they were super. They were like little records, and they sounded cool at the time. I mean, at today's standards, people don't think that anymore. but
I still appreciate
cool.
CDs.
Yeah, it was good and crisp and reliable and dependable, and it was different than tape. I hated tape. Tape hisses and wears out, and I never really. They made really cheap tapes when they mass produced things like Purple Rain on tape or whatever. It was just cheap as hell, and a guy like me listened to it in his Walkman hundreds of times and would just burn it out.
Yeah, and the tape would get all messed up. And,
Yeah, you could accidentally pull it all out and have to put it in, and it's all crumpled and it never sounds good again. And yeah, it was just a very different thing. And I think people like me most of them have just kind of evolved to being I saw it on iTunes, and I bet a lot of people my age do still buy the whole album. I do also because a lot of what I listen to these days is people I've met and people I want to support. So if I can, I buy the whole thing. And in some cases I might not listen to it, but still it's I bought it.
And this is something that sort of bugs me about my generation, is that the millennial generation in general just doesn't go out of their way most of the time to physically or to purchase something physical or to purchase even something digital. It takes a lot to initiate that sort of thing. I think that's one of the big reasons why markers of success for up-and-coming artists is usually stream numbers. But your generation and the generation before you, really, that actually does go out of their way to purchase physical copies of things, I believe is sort of the foundation of the monetary element of music still, at least.
Certainly was. It's certainly what got us to this point. It was people buying records at Tower and stuff in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And it was huge. It was huge. Everybody did it. My family had, hundreds of records because it was everybody in the house's collection. It was stuff I liked, stuff they liked, and it's kind of like the way digital is now, but everybody was more curated down to what they wanted. And, and I don't know, it was different. And on that point, it's something I think about a lot too. In my opinion, recorded music is free, it's dead. It's just, you can't sell it. But if you have that same recording and it's popular and people like it, you can package it as a limited edition, vinyl or something, and they will buy that. In theory, it's something I do. It's something I see a lot of people, at least putting the effort out to make, is making something one time we got a flash drive from a guy. He just sold a flash drive with 5 albums on it. And that was a limited edition thing, and it's cool to have.
I've met someone that does that too.
Yeah. I wanted to when I started, but it's really hard to source those things as cheap as you could do tape or CDs. So I gave up on the idea because I thought people would actually be like, I could reuse this. That was my thing, 2 terabytes or something, or 1 terabyte, or back then it was a long time. It was a decade ago, so it was probably 1 gig or something. It was what I was thinking, trying to source, and they were really expensive, like $5 a piece, even wholesale.
For just a flash drive.
Yeah, just one. You want to buy it in bulk and use them and like give them out. I'd have to charge people $10 or something.
And at that point, get CDs made.
Yeah, and it's the same. It's not. I wanted it to be cheaper, and I wanted it to be desirable. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's an ever evolving thing, and it's sort of as the record store day was just this weekend, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. You know what it was.
Some people are still in that, and I think that's great. That's one of my favorite things. Like I said,
yeah, there's definitely been a resurgence, of course, in like the last 5-10 years of people that do go out of their way and buy vinyl, and you know, actually consume the physical copies of music. But it's the exception, not the rule these days, which is, you know, kind of, which is a little different to navigate as an artist.
Oh, I know.
Because getting some of this stuff actually made is getting more and more expensive.
True.
So, you know, it's you really don't know. In whether or not it's going to be a worthy investment unless you have a, you know, like solid base following that is actively consuming your music and is actively going out to your shows, and you can actually, you know, turn a profit and see it, you know, on a daily basis from, you know, like Bandcamp buys or just, you know, merch sales, stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't know where you fall in that as far as your previous music experience and you know, getting merch created and trying to sell that. But if you have any like experiences that you could kind of share, that I would be interested in hearing that.
I think with the deal with the merch that I did with the band that I had with EV and everything is we evolved a bunch and changed. Like we started out as we didn't know what to call ourselves, and I was a solo act just using my name. And I didn't really want to change that because nothing was going to change except I had a bass player and that she would contribute songs as well. You know, that was the plan when we started out. So we started out just like Justin Longoria / Evie. and that was weird and convoluted. And then one day my friend Eli actually he turned to me and he was like, why don't you just call the band Longorio? Like it's a cookie, like it's the cookie, and it's all stretched out. And we had this idea of a logo that was like somebody grabbed an Oreo cookie and it was Play-Doh or something, and it just came out all gooey. And in the middle, it would say Longorio, and I was like, yeah, let's do that. And we got Alicia to make up the shirts, like, you know, because she had her own screen printing thing, and you know, like she still has a band with her husband called Adam and Evie. And they make their own everything. They were putting out tapes before we did. They were putting out CDs, and like she's got it all down. She just goes online and looks up like CD template or whatever and makes stuff up, and does the same thing with screen printing. She can print something off of her computer onto a transfer, like a overhead projector kind of sheet of plastic, and then make a screen print out of that, like, you know, and then, you know, we just
go over it. And
we just did them by hand with ink and, you know, handmade like little frames and stuff that she has, and that's how we did our merch. And our whole thing was, I kind of just fell into it. It was just like I see somebody doing something, I'd be like, I want that, and we did tapes that worked pretty well because I talked to a lot of people and I polled a lot of people that I know that were going to be the people that I was going to be hitting up to buy my stuff, you know, and a lot of them had old cars and things, so they had an interest in tapes and they were okay with tapes, and they would buy a cheap tape, and I was like, all right. And I always, with all of our merch, I always included a free download code. You know, you got a download code with the tape to get a digital version, because I didn't like the tape. I wanted people to hear it. I spent all this time at home trying to make it sound good on the computer. I wanted them to hear it that way, not through a tape that was. Oh yeah, we also had she had an old boom box, and we just duped the tapes manually, one at a time, in real time. We did real small batches, so it wasn't like a thing. But yeah, so far, I mean, that's really most of my merch experience. And I'm like that. I'm a DIY kind of guy. I was putting out my own CDs before I was working with Alicia, and same way, just burning them at home, recording them at home, and all that. But that's always been what I was interested in. I've had a Tascam since the 90s, and then in 99 I went to audio school just so that I could do it myself.
Oh, I didn't realize you had an audio background.
I should probably wear a shirt or something, especially when I'm working a sound gig. But I was like, I know what I'm doing. No, but I in 1999 I went to, it was called Dallas Sound Lab, but it was a studio in Las Colinas.
Okay.
That became MediaTek. I think that's what they call it.
I was gonna say it sounds a lot like MediaTek.
Yeah, it's wild to hear about that.
I've had a few friends go to MediaTek and graduate from there. I've been there and recorded there. So
yeah, I don't know. I think they moved. There was a place. Yeah, I guess it was in the Las Colinas compound where the studios are. And then I think that flooded at some point in the 2000s, and now they're on Royal Lane somewhere.
Oh, really?
Or did you go to the old place?
I went.
That would be cool.
The place I went to was
There's a lot of history.
It was in Carrollton, technically.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't in Las Colinas. I'm from Irving, and so I know where the Las Colinas area is.
Yeah, you know.
But I had no idea that it was there. Did it flood because of the lake that was there? Or
it was long after I stopped associating with it, because I have a background in film too. Before I did music in the 90s, my mom worked. She married a photographer and started doing a lot of his, art direction for his photography, and that led to her working with other people in town that do commercials and stuff. And I kind of bombed out of college, so I came back home and started helping her. I had been helping her through high school and things. She would do Chuck E. Cheese. We used to do the Chuck E. Cheese videos, and I was a cartoonist and stuff as a kid, so I would draw a lot of my art and stuff were in very old Chuck E. Cheese videos.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And my brothers were little, and they would appear in these videos as little kids and stuff, and yeah, it was really wild. We did a ton of them, just lots of that. I did that for about 5 or 6 years in the late 90s, and I think I stopped in 2001. Like the last thing I did was a commercial for O-Town, or O-Town was in it, this band that used to exist, and it was fun. It was like it was like an MP3 player for kids, but it was on these little cartridges, and you had a weird little player.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I had one of those.
Clips or something like that.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I worked on an ad for those.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so funny. I had one of those damn things as a kid.
Wow.
It was like around the time that
Did it even have the full song? I think it did.
No, it was just
like a sample.
Yeah, it's just like it was such a weird thing. It was like 30 seconds of a song. Like
probably cost $10.
Yeah,
$5 or something.
It was so strange. I remember getting one after the first Shrek movie came out. I was really young. I think I was like 8 or 9 or something like that. And I would just pop that stupid Smash Mouth song in and listen to it. Just 30 seconds of it. Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't know you worked on that. That's cool.
Yeah, I've done a ton of those things. We did a show called Monster Vision. This guy a local guy named Joe Bob Briggs. He reviews like cheesy bad B movies and horror movies and stuff.
Interesting.
He was an idol of mine growing up. I always read his article in the paper because I like bad movies too. And like he rated them by how much blood and gore there was and how many boobs you saw. And as a little boy, it was like I needed to know these things going in. And it was important information. So I thought he was the coolest guy. And then later I got to work on his thing because my mom became an art director in Dallas and worked on a bunch of things. And she was great. She was one of the best.
That's really cool.
Really cool. She worked with a ton of cool people, tons of cool people, and I did too. I worked on 4 movies. And
you did 4 movies?
Yeah, that shot here in Dallas, or shot in Dallas, not here, but I don't know. I mean, I think I did. I was temporarily staying in Louisville when I was working on one of those movies, and that was bad. I had to drive into Oak Cliff every day to go to work.
Oh yeah, I guess it's like what, a 45 minute drive,
It was really
something.
long. Yeah, and the highway was completely torn up back then. It was all the stuff they've done now. They hadn't even started. They were just tearing it apart.
Yeah, whenever I moved out here, they were still doing work on 35, and I don't think they finished it until after I had been out here for like 3 years, and they had been working on it like 4 or 5 years prior, like they started it. I don't know. That highway took so long to finish. And I don't know why, but they got it done now for the most part. At least. There's still parts of it, especially in Louisville. Like I drive down 35 to get to work every day, and they got potholes and stuff, especially in Louisville. So it's like as soon as they finish that section, they finish the Denton section, it's like now that one's bad again. So
it feels like the whole way here was under construction, but yeah, it's like it must be like starting up after the shutdown is like, excuse me, maybe things got delayed and they're just at it now, but
yeah, I don't know, but
that way.
So whenever you finished audio engineering school, what kind of stuff did you get into kind of immediately following that? Did you get into like live production, or did you stick with the movie thing for a while?
Well,
or?
There wasn't a lot. There was a kind of a big class, and I was in the second class ever. You know, they already had one go through. I don't think they were accredited yet and things like that, but they were trying to really help people out. I ended up interning at there. I just stayed at the studio, which was fun. I got to do a lot of cool things. Erykah Badu came through.
Cool.
I was hanging out. We were still in class when one of the times she was there, and God, what else happened? The alternative radio station, I think it was called The Edge.
Oh yeah, I remember The Edge. I was really sad when The Edge left, but
yeah, that was like, I guess that was like my generation's like high school age radio station that had like Nirvana and everything on it. But they did a couple of things. I remember Everclear coming through.
Cool.
And they were great. They were really cool dudes. I was really happy to get to meet them, and they just did a live thing in the studio, and audience people, I guess, heard about it on the radio and were allowed to come and sit and be an audience. And
that's cool.
That also was a band, I don't know if you called Oleander.
Yeah, I know Oleander.
Yeah, they were also very nice and sweet, and I thought it was so funny. Yeah, I guess their big song was kind of a lovey-dovey thing or something that girls related to. It was, he told me, I talked to the guy and just hanging out with him, and he's like, yeah, that song is about my wife. And he was newly married and just through the moon in love with his wife, but on tour away from her and stuff, and he was just missing her and sad. And the whole place, the whole studio was just full of young girls that were just in love with him. They loved him so much and wanted to be with him, and I just was laughing, talking to them, like, hanging out and stuff. And they're like, yeah, and they're like, oh, he's so great. And I'm like, yeah, he's really in love with his wife. Like, he seems like a good guy. I think you're out of luck. But
that's cool. Those are two bands I grew up with.
Really?
I grew up
cool
listening
dudes.
to them.
It's like good memories of doing those kind of things. I just cataloged tape. They had a bunch of 2-inch tape, and I cataloged it and got bored after a while. I was not getting paid, and I was broke. I had no other job, and I needed to work, so I went back to film production. And I don't know. I guess that is before the last big movie I worked on. I met my ex-wife, and that led to a kind of a different thing. And then she got me doing music in front of people and stuff.
So I guess that brings me to my next question then. When did you start doing music? Was it while you were doing the audio stuff, or was it before then?
I picked up the guitar when I was 15 because of Prince and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix and everything. I wanted to know what they did, how they did it. I wanted to learn. So, and my family is musical. My grandfather was a professional musician here in the Metroplex back in the 50s and 60s, and made his living that way.
That's cool.
Yeah, very cool, and very, and like he made all his kids learn, and I eventually picked up guitar. They all play horns and wind instruments and things because he played trumpet, and my dad plays trumpet and everything. But I picked up guitar. It spoke to me. It was the thing I wanted to do, and I was obsessed with it. And that Christmas when I was 15, I got a guitar and took private lessons. And I always made music on my own. I was just really chicken. And I would try to be in bands or try to help people out. Like I kind of fiddled around with trying to be in bands. And when I went to high school in Colorado, because my dad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my dad works in oil, and I'd moved to live with him first when he was in West Texas, in Odessa, and then we almost went to Oklahoma. That only lasted 2 weeks, and we came back and lived in Midland, and then he got the company he worked for got bought out by Halliburton, and he got a promotion. He was manager of the whole West Coast for Halliburton, and so that moved us. He needed to be more centrally located, so we moved to Denver. And lived in, yeah.
That must have been quite a transition.
It was crazy. It changed everything about my life. I was a nerdy nobody in Midland. Everybody cared about football. Nobody cared about comic books and music and stuff and being creative. I was an outcast there.
I was going to say Odessa, Midland. Yeah. Those are huge football areas here. So.
Permian Basin.
Yeah,
I know, and I don't even care about football. It's like just growing up there and being there, you realize that all the popular kids were football players and cheerleaders, and it was just like that's what it was. But then I moved to a bigger city in a bigger place, and that was kind of cool because I was from Texas and a little different, and I found people that liked the same stuff I did, and it was totally different. It was I had tons of friends. I had a great time, and then my dad got transferred again when I was in the summer. It started in the summer between my junior and senior year, and he was going to, he was going to Jakarta, Indonesia.
He went to Indonesia?
Yeah. My family. I have a sister that's the child of my stepmom and my father.
Okay.
And they live separately. They actually are in Houston right now.
Oh,
but they all moved over and went to Indonesia for a few years, and then after that, I think he was transferred back to Houston, and then he got transferred back to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So
wow.
This was all my college years and out of high school and stuff.
Okay, so you moved in with your mom after
senior year of high school.
Senior year of high school.
So
you changed high schools quite a bit then.
Only that one time, but I changed a lot of schools growing up. Like I went to somewhere first and second grade, and somewhere else third and fourth, and then there were in Midland they would move you to a different school each year for some reason. So the years I was there, I was in 3 different school buildings. And it was a weird thing. And they would also, it was like one year I was close, the next year I was really far away, next year I was kind of close. And it's just something they did to kind of, I guess, like disperse the population a little and like.
Yeah, maybe because it's fair. A small town.
Yeah, maybe try to keep it a little more even and fair and not be like, here's the nice school and here's everyone else,
Yeah, I guess so.
Because it was a mixture. It's like some schools would be a little bit rougher than the others, a little bit different group of kids, and but it was weird to leave all my friends, and I just started to drive. We all were driving around and kind of being little miniature adults, and I just moved away from everything, left a girlfriend, everything. But I was told that I would have to wait to finish school, and I was held back in 4th grade. So I was already older, like a year older than everybody else, and I didn't want to wait anymore. I wanted to be an adult. I was already going to be 18 in high school in my senior year, so I was like, I want to get out. I don't want any delay, even if it means going to a cool. And I was also a little bit like, it's not really for me. I don't. Is there Nintendo? Is there? I was like, I had things that I needed to have in my life, and I wasn't sure if a foreign country had them.
I bet with all that moving, you probably wrote a lot of songs if you were playing guitar around that time.
That's actually when I started really officially starting, because I had moved away from my teacher. He just taught me everything I wanted to know. I'd bring in songs and he'd teach me. He taught me how to play by ear more than anything else. Like I'm pretty bad with theory.
Yeah, I am too.
And I've tried really hard to learn how to read. I understand it, but if there's tablature, I'm a lazy guitarist. I'm like, I'll put my finger there. It's like never try to actually understand real tablature.
Yeah, I almost feel like with the fact that tablature exists, like
knowing how to read music as a guitarist is sort of like useless. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't do you a whole lot.
I think I get the impression
if you
too.
can just watch, how the notes work and then listen to it,
And something about that transfer, it might be better suited for different instruments than a guitar. It seems like notation is really difficult. So like, it's a lot of like, it might be, I would imagine it is probably, because I think it's supposed to correspond with the scale of a piano or something. So it might actually be meant to be like you compose on piano and you write it out in notation in that way. And everybody I know that plays piano can read notes like nobody's business.
Yeah.
It's like it seems to be a one-to-one, and like the guitar tablature is written out in that way. It's lined out like a fret of a guitar, like a neck of a guitar. But I don't know. Like I said, I didn't go to school or anything. I did private lessons, and everything else I've done I've learned on my own because I learned how to play by ear and just pick up tricks and watch things. And it's amazing what people can do these days.
Yeah, there's so much out there. But so whenever you went to college, where did you go, and what was your major, or what were you interested in studying at the time?
When I was trying to go to college, I started out at community college. I started out in Dallas at Richland, the local, like this city community college. And my intention was to get all of my boring stuff done, and then I was gonna try to apply and get into fine arts at UT. That was my plan, because I wanted just to have 2 years of painting and a reason to do that. And, I guess, I don't know, I just never thought about the music thing because it always was a separate, like, personal, I just do it thing, not like it was always kind of private. So I didn't think about it as an education thing. And I got really burned out trying to do nothing but take all the hard, unpleasant, things. College also surprised me because college, all the basics like math and history and English was everything I already knew from high school. There was nothing new. There was no step forward, at least in the community college level. It was literally, especially math. It was like math I already had done, and I was very frustrated just repeating what I already felt like I had to, prove that I knew.
Right. And it's funny to hear you say that about community college back then, because, even going to community college, for me, like 6-7 years ago now, like it was the same deal. It just felt like extended high school classes.
Yeah, it seemed very much the same, except you were on your own trying to do it by yourself. And I don't know, it just didn't work for me. It didn't click. I guess if maybe I had diversified a little. I took like one life drawing class and loved it. But that was like, everything else. The only art I allowed myself to take was art history because I wanted it out of the way. I don't like art history.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
I love art, but I don't like people's opinions of it,
So you did art too, then? That was just kind of another hobby you did in high school, and then
growing up I wanted
you got kind of serious with it, or?
I tried when I was graduating. I thought that would be a good career path. It would be like, I want to be an artist, and I had always grown up thinking that I was going to be that guy who just kind of like finds his way and just toughs it out, starving, painting in a crappy apartment somewhere or something. And it just morphed into music instead because, I picked up that instrument. I did grow up wanting to be a comic book artist. And then it morphed into like using comic book style in a fine art, approach. Like I wanted to do different sized panels, different sized paintings, and like put them on a wall, like a panel, like a page of a comic book or something like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, I liked what I did, but art people, like art teachers and stuff didn't. they never were like, that's great. They were always like, you need a lot of work, and I wasn't ready for that. It wasn't.
Yeah, I don't think most people are. I've met a lot of artists that go to school to do art, and a lot of them just drop out after the first or second year because it just
beaten down.
Yeah, and then like my stepsister, she went to college for art, and she was in a very like career-oriented art program where she was like making logos and designing like slogans for companies and stuff like that, and she was networking with a lot of like bigger companies, and was sort of creating her portfolio the entire time she was in school. So she was in like a very business oriented artistic path, but she never graduated, and I just remember like listening to her talk about her art classes directly after high school, and man, I could totally see why it would be very tedious to go into that field in a college sense, because there was one class in particular that I just remember watching her be so frustrated about, because the entire semester she was just drawing lines and shapes and was getting like
it's like kindergarten or something.
Yeah,
like
getting like
how to write.
Yeah, getting like critiqued on the straightness of her lines, and and it's just
not have done well in that environment.
no, and I don't know if it was like at the entire
wasted
semester.
my family's money,
but yeah, it was pretty tedious, that's for sure. And I feel that way about certain like horror stories I've heard whenever it comes to like creative writing classes. But I had this one friend of mine who really wanted to write books. That was like his thing. He wanted to be an author, and he went to a creative writing class, and his professor the first day wanted everybody to write like 3 pages worth of some kind of story off of a paperclip. So like he just walked in and he's like, write a story involving this paperclip.
I took a class like that in school, or at regular school. I had teachers that we start every class with writing in our little notebooks, and you had to do a certain amount of minutes of creative writing, and
on some level that really interests me, but on another level I could see how that would be extremely frustrating, because I think you can get inspiration from anything, but those kind of courses really suck everything out of you. Like, you have to constantly be pulling creative energy from everywhere throughout the entire course, and that's really hard to keep up with. And I think that that's another reason why a lot of people get burnt out on those kind of degrees, because it's very competitive, and there's I think in a way they're competitive for that reason, that they're trying to weed out the people that aren't necessarily passionate about whatever it is that they're going into. But I guess you could say that about pretty much all college courses. I felt like,
to a degree, they try to like kind of condition you to realize it's not going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be easy. But I wonder too if it might have a little bit to do with like the way education is in America. Is that I was lucky enough to go to schools that had art programs, and I could take the art class or take the creative writing class, or it was like the thing that got me into guitar was the junior high in Colorado had an elective called guitar appreciation. We just got in the music room with the music teacher, and he taught us how to play, Mary Had a Little Lamb or whatever. And I was the A student. I remember always getting to go and play with the cool keyboard with the headphones on instead of learning the boring guitar stuff, because I was so good at that. And that was, I guess that was the step that led to that Christmas. And my dad got me my first,
guitar.
Yeah. First acoustic. He didn't want an electric. I had to buy my own electric with my own money, because he didn't want that in the house. But then he liked it, because I was like playing Star Spangled Banner all in Hendrix or something, and he's like, oh yeah, okay, because he's that generation. But I guess he thought it was going to be really noisy and atonal or something, which I can be. But I just wonder, is like our education system, like, when you go into college, that's kind of the first time as a creative that you ever have to actually prove it, you know, or actually do stuff. And like if you were drawing lines when you were in first grade and knew you wanted to be an artist, that evolution leading up to college, you'd probably be doing way more advanced things and feel better about it, and it might go smoother, you know. But
Yeah.
you know, that's just my thinking about that. Is like that's kind of my feeling too. Is like I had the opportunity to learn, but I didn't have the opportunity to learn what I really needed to know, which was how to take criticism, how to like actually make stuff that a art school would be interested in. Like nobody taught me that at all. I didn't take any of the art classes. None of them ever said like in art schools look for this, or you know here's how to put together a portfolio. I don't even know if there was anybody at the time who like did that. Like if there was an instructional thing that you could pay for, like studying for the SAT, you know, I don't think there was anything at the time. And this is '92, and I gathered up all my comic book art and all my things I did in art class, and I went to this big. It was like a convention, and it was just all the different representatives from different art schools in the United States at a convention center in Arlington. And me and my friend, who also wanted to be a painter, went together, and we got tore to pieces by these people. They just ripped us apart. Every major art school in America, like, just told me I sucked. So it was like, okay. And he would get out my portfolio and be like, "You did this at home. You did this in class. You did this at home. You did this in class." He was 100% correct. And it was shocking. It was just like, I hadn't even thought about half of the stuff that they presented me with. And it was just lack of preparedness.
Yeah, and I don't think that schools in America in general really prepare you for college, and I think that that's because the schools in America that do prepare you for college are the schools that people are paying for.
Yeah.
It's usually like the private schools or even some like
wealthy kids do way better in college.
Yeah.
I graduated from Highland Park, and it really was like a college prep. Their curriculum was college prep. All the kids I grew up with in Highland Park aced college. Their studies, they were partying, they were having a good time, but all their papers, all their books, they turned them in gold. My best friend was on the dean's list at UT.
Wow.
And he and I were always just getting baked and hanging out and drinking in the park and stuff, you know. We were like going into the woods and drinking tall boys of Guinness and getting high and hanging out and he was taking pictures and everything, but he was just so well prepped growing up that he just flew through it.
Oh, yeah, that's just kind of the way it goes. But, you know, and that's something, too, that I feel like we're kind of having a wave back a little bit in society whenever it comes to education, because people are kind of waking up to the fact that education isn't nearly as valuable anymore as it used to be. And you know, even being college educated now, I see that more than ever, because I think that college taught me how to think critically in a way I never would have been able to figure out purely on my own. Without like the rigorousness of, you know, curriculum and like having to read 8 books in a semester. You know what I mean? Like without that standard, I wouldn't have done it. It just the person I am. You know what I mean? I have such an ADD active mind and lifestyle that I just wouldn't have done that. But so I got some value out of it. But in you know, comparing it to the options out there in the world as far as like what you could realistically do with an undergraduate degree in our society, it's extremely limited unless you're in some sort of tech industry, at least right now. But like even something arts related, it's even more difficult.
I'm sure it's outrageous.
Yeah, and I've got quite a few friends that teach music lessons on their own that don't have a degree, and it's like you can do that now without having a degree, and really even then people can figure it out on their own online these days too. Just having a YouTube channel or something showing how to play through a song or something. So it's interesting it's kind of eye-opening to hear you talk about that sort of parallel existing then, because I don't think much has changed really.
Probably not. Yeah, but I mean, that was my limited experience, and I know it's possible. I have a former in-law that is a massively successful painter, and he did the whole thing. He went through art school, and he did well and could hack it, and and that also I think is. He kind of, he wasn't super effusive about it all to me, but like the few things he did kind of say about it was like, it was key, it was integral. Going to art school gave him the connections he needed to be a painter in the art world and actually to make a career out of it. So it's, in that way it works, but I guess it really weeds out a lot of people. But I think about that a lot too. There's like me growing up, anytime I told an older person I wanted to be a musician, because that started being a thing. Like once I was 15, it was like, that's a possibility. Maybe I want to do that. Every adult told me I could never make it. It was all luck. It was there was no merit in it at all. You were screwed for trying it. It's just like, I think I just met a bunch of people that tried and gave up, and that was their approach, was just to tell everybody else, no, it's not possible. It's pure dumb luck, and you'll never do it. And that seems to have kind of died out. Like, I don't hear that. I don't think people are, I don't know, maybe you hear that all the time or something, but I don't hear it as much. And nobody ever says that to me anymore, but I don't know why they would.
I don't really hear it too much. I mean, I've heard it quite a bit from my parents.
And just meet people in life, adults that would just immediately tear into me like, it's not possible. Like, you'll never make it, kid.
Yeah, and most people, when they hear you're a musician,
it's like
they're really enthusiastic about it. And maybe it's just because the pool of musicians who actually play an instrument has gotten so much smaller. Because nowadays there's a lot of DJs and people that do stuff digitally, so that might be it too. I don't know, but
I just think it was a thing, and I've heard other people say, like, in a similar fashion, they're like, well, people in Hollywood used to do that a lot too. It's like a young person goes to Hollywood and meets somebody who says they're an agent or whatever, and they're like, you'll never make a kid, you don't got what it takes. It was like a test, it was code. It wasn't really like they really believed that. It was just like a lingo thing you say to somebody when they have stars in their eyes. You just try to knock them down, and and you test them. You see if they really mean it, because that is true. I think that's true. Is like tenacity is a huge part of it. Huge part of it. Never quit. Never surrender. Never throw in the towel. And you'll be the last person there. It might take a while, but you'll get your shot, and I see people, it really is like do or do not, it's that simple.
Yeah.
And there's no stakes anymore. Nobody's making any money. Nobody's doing anything. There's no stakes at all.
And that's something else I was going to kind of point out, is it, what a career in music looks like now is very different than what it used to look like. And it's been so much easier for people to do stuff on their own that I think if you're wanting any sort of success, you can define it in the way that you want it to look like more than ever than anybody's been able to before. So like for me personally, I think that our days of having, the hit sensation band or individual artist has kind of gone and went, so to speak. There's going to be like waves of people that are the exception to that, but I think that their career duration is going to be a lot shorter than what it used to be in recent past, because there's so much readily available out there. People's attention can shift extremely quickly.
It seems like for most people, it's one album. One go round. You got that one time where you're popular and the song's popular, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's another person's turn or another thing altogether.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think about like even certain, like the emo fad in like the early 2000s. Those bands had like one good album, really, one or two good albums, and that was it. And that's just sort of the way it goes.
Where's all the guys that talked about Xanax and had stuff tattooed on their faces right now? Where are those guys? That was only a couple of years ago, and that was the biggest thing in music was whatever. I don't know if that's. I mean, I've heard that be called bedroom producer, but I think it's a little bit more just like pop, rap, suburban kid things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that came and went real fast, and I don't expect to see that make a resurgence. I don't think we're going to see another Little Xan hit or was it, even Little Wayne's probably not going to have another big one. But none of those people seem to really do. Like, they have their initial hits, and then any comeback album, any follow-up is okay. It's business, I'm sure they make more money than we even can think of. But it's like, it's just, it's weird. It's wild how that is so different and so disposable and changes so fast. It's like, I used to try to like make a song that like people would really want to know and really want to, like a hit. I used to try to do a hit, and I think I've given up on that because it's like you just sound weird. I think it ended up making what I was doing confusing because it was too far out there to be poppy for real, but it had a pop flavoring to it. So people that are weird probably were like, I don't like that kind of stuff. It was like, to me, it was a statement, like a something to put on and jump around in and act like, look at me, I'm a pop star or whatever. But I also wanted to like kind of sugarcoat the messaging of things that I was talking about, because there was never like happiness and light. It was always, cop killings and the drug war is unfair, and my big song was about, I made it because it was supposed to parody the situation we were in at Crown and Harp. They had an open mic, and but the open mic was like 9 o'clock till close, and 10 or 11 o'clock on upstairs, because that bar had 2 levels. They would have a DJ night called the Cool Off, or Cool Out. I'm sorry. So I just thought, like, all the open micers that open mic'd with me were like these older guys, and they would try to book themselves. They would schedule themselves early and get the fuck out of there because they didn't want to be around all that stuff. And I did the opposite. I would wait and play late because they were young. There was a bigger crowd and a crowd of people, not just open micers. And so I started tailoring all my stuff to that. So I wrote this song about that situation of like, originally it was really mean and really anti-DJ and really like just rude and as angry as I could, and I felt bad, and kind of changed it to be just a little bit more like a stupid party song, and that was that was like the most popular thing I ever wrote, and it's so many things, but it's not like easy or simple or like it's not like it's not Old Town Road, it's not, and people like it, and certain people probably wouldn't like it, and certain people would really like it, but it's just like, and that was like probably, it might be like my last effort of doing something like that, of like trying to make something that like connects and makes people happy, because I'm having more fun. Like, I'm also like, what I do now is a lot more just experimental and free flowing, and I think I'm trying to decide exactly what to do with it. It's a little bit in the air, because I've got the music, and I made up a bunch of stuff during the lockdown. I just came home every night after work and drank beers and made up things on my looper, and I have a lot of material, but I just don't have a lot of things to say at the moment. I think it's coming, because everything's getting back to normal. I feel it. I've got ideas. I don't want to say them, but I have ideas about what I think I want to do next.
That's cool. That's cool. So the stuff you're writing is a little bit more experimental right now.
Yeah. It's kind of jammy and starts like that. My intention was always to kind of use, like I said before, use the looper as an instrument in a way, not like all the way, or like be able to refer to it or get to it and set things up with it, and then work from there. But so it will typically I'll make up a beat and then like play to that, and if I make up some kind of a phrase or something I like, I'll put that down, and then I'll just keep working on it. And see, and that's what I was talking about, is like I could do that in front of people, but I think it would take 45 minutes to get one song, and when I do that at home, it's okay. I can do that all day and not bother anybody. So it's kind of I'm trying to figure out this balance of like maybe I can kind of perform making it in a way, like sort of have it a little bit preset, a little bit set in mind, instead of just trying to be cool. And I know a lot of people that improv, and I always ask them a lot of questions about it because I'm fascinated by it. I want to do it myself, but it's like getting up there and like really, instead of just going for the easy answer, but like, here's a song people like, and trying to be like, I'm gonna really get somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm gonna really go places.
Well, I will say that the solo artist thing is becoming more and more popular these days. There's quite a few solo artists that I listen to that started by just making demos by themselves. Car Seat Headrest is one. Julian Baker is one. Tame Impala that started out as like a solo thing.
Yeah.
So it's definitely just there's always been quite a bit of luck involved as far as who gets the attention, but in this day and age, I don't think that a lot of attention for your music is necessarily a good thing anymore, just because I noticed that once people get attention making a certain kind of music, like they just abandon all other avenues of experimentation and just pursue one thing. Like there's quite a few guys that were in metal bands that weren't doing much in the metal scene, or were doing stuff in like the punk scene that weren't getting a whole lot of attention, and they started making DJ stuff, and like they're not even in those bands anymore. They just tour as a DJ or like as a beat maker, basically. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because they're doing what they want to do and they're getting attention for it. But as someone that like appreciates the rawness of just people, physically in a space putting stuff together with each other, there's a part of me that like really kind of rejects that. It's just kind of a double-edged sword whenever it comes to music nowadays, and the amount of paths that you could take. Because I know for a fact that like if I wanted to put the time and effort into learning how to make beats or learning how to make EDM music, I could do it. And I think other people are doing it while they're in bands and stuff, like on the side. And it's not, it's difficult to master, but it's not difficult to do. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Half of what I do is like that. I just bought I watched this thing about this documentary that Reverb did about guitar pedals. If you haven't seen it, look it up. I think you can rent it on iTunes or whatever, or Apple TV or something.
Cool.
Yeah, but check it out.
What's it called?
It's called The Pedal Movie, I think. It's just The Pedal Movie, but it really was good, and the basic thing is like the original guitar pedals were so janky the way they were made. Like it was old transistors and old parts. That germanium is the word. When I was getting into guitar, the word germanium meant cool. Like it meant that if the pedal emulated germanium, circuitry, it was cool. It sounded cool. And that was the thing, is all the 60s pedals sounded really great, but they broke real easy. And it burned guitar players out on pedals. And in the 70s, Japanese companies, or specifically Boss, showed up with these durable pedals. And also MXR. MXR made these little pedals that are, the guy would demo it, but it's in the documentary. You'd say, go outside and throw it in the street, and you pick it up and plug it in and play it. And to prove that it was durable, as opposed to like an Electro-Harmonix or a Octavia or whatever the thing is, that the old pedals that broke all the time.
Yeah.
So and then it crossed over into that, and then I came around in the early '80s, learning how to play, and it was all pretty high tech. But at the same time, people were making better versions of those '60s pedals. So I wanted a big muff. I had to get a big muff, and I kind of vacillated. My idols at that time were all like Sonic Youth and Nirvana and everything, and they were like Turbo Rats and MXRs and stuff, and probably for different reasons. But I like the way, I've always found that the big muff actually, as a distortion pedal, has this wide range of ways you can dial it in. It does really subtle distortion. It does really over the top distortion. It does kind of in the middle. You can get so many more different tones out of it than other pedals.
Yeah, it's an interesting pedal for sure. I've never been able to utilize that pedal in my really? Sound particularly. Yeah, it's
kind of a beast. You kind of have to be ready to just go.
Yeah, it's just a little too much for me. I've always gravitated more towards light distortions myself, like overdrives. I really love. I have 2 separate overdrive pedals in my setup. Wow. And one like true distortion pedal, but I dial the distortion down quite a bit. Yeah, that's really all I particularly like to use. But I had a friend of mine who only used a big muff pedal.
That's
and
pretty much been me for a long time. I bought a pedal from my teacher when I got started, and it was a Digitech, like a yellow one with 2 buttons on it, 2 foot switches. It was broken. He sold it to me cheap because it was kind of broken. He didn't really want it, and it was cool. It had 2 different stages of distortion. Like one was kind of more crunchy and old-fashioned. The other was like really modern and like zooted up to a million. It was just like And I made a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with those, but eventually when I got my muff, and like it's one I still have. I bought it when I was young. I've had it for 30 years.
Wow.
And I have 2, and I don't know how old the other one is, but pretty close to in age, because I think I have 2. They're pretty much the same, but one has broken knobs. So I use the one that doesn't have the broken knobs. But yeah, that's been my sound, and my whole thing is pedals. So like I can't really. I used to play without pedals, so my songs used to be composed and had melodies and stuff to them, and now it's just all tricks and noises, and I've got a pedal that makes my guitar sound like a bass, so I can do bass lines, and that's how I churned up the productivity so much, is I can do it all at my fingertips now, and it's way more streamlined to do. But with me, like I was saying, that pedal movie inspired me to buy this thing called a pocket operator, because I was looking for something. I want something at the end stage of my rig, after the loops, after all that I can do kind of like electronic music, kind of DJ sort of things with it. I want the option. I don't really want to make it a factor in my songwriting, but I want the option to be able to like close out a song, like getting weird and changing the speed and the tempo and putting filters and things. Like I think I don't want to do this, but I think I need an Ableton pad. And like all that requires all the stuff that like a laptop and an Ableton on my setup with next to my looper and everything. I really don't want to make that stage, but that's probably where I'm going.
It's called a pocket operator.
Yeah, it's like a circuit board. with, like you put 2 batteries in the back, and they're pretty cool. I almost brought it just to show you, because it's pretty limited. It's way more limited than I wanted it to be, but I also have not really seen an effects pedal that does exactly what I'm looking for either, which is, just like the way guys that I call them table toppers, like they go to shows and they plug in a bunch of shit, and they're turning knobs the whole time, and it drastically changes the sound of things, and like these filters come in. I want to do that.
Is it like pitch filters?
Yeah, like that kind of like high pass filters and low pass filters and all those. That's what those pads do. That's how people make music with that. Is they have music stems. They have little like tracks that they play through on their whatever. Some guys use tapes. Some guys use Tascams, and then they have a bunch of effects. And the effects can like alter the sound of what's playing, and I just think that would be a fun addition to what I do. And like for me personally, like anytime I add a new thing, I write a whole bunch of new stuff, because it is that process of learning how to use it, how to make it actually work for you, and stuff that gets me a lot of new ideas. And it's like, it's a weird thing. I feel kind of limited. Like if I were to strip back down to just a guitar, I'd probably have a really hard time. Or at least it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be like, oh, I've got this new toy, and I do this, and
That's cool. Yeah, I've never heard anything like that before. But I appreciate people that can do that sort of stuff on their own. But anyways, we're kind of at the hour mark here, so I'll go ahead and end the podcast now. But if there's anywhere where people can listen to stuff that you've released or you're going to release, where would people go to check out some of your music?
Well, I've got a Bandcamp, and I have a YouTube channel too, and I have been actually putting, since the lockdown and stuff, I put a couple videos out, and I put up one video. I had to make space on my phone for the cloud or whatever, so I took years of live video off of my phone. It's just been in my collection, my photos from different things, and it's a ton of it, and some of it's pretty old. Some of it goes back like 10 years at this point, when I started doing things in the scene locally. So I put up a video of just all the little snippets I have from Crown and Harp, like for those days, and I don't know most of the bands. Yeah, me too. It was where I got my start. It was really where things started to click for me. Like I didn't know what was going. I was just doing open mics and trying a different set every single time, because I was going every week, and I didn't want to play the same 3 songs like everybody else. And I was fumbling around, and then I started going there, and it was like, oh, cool. This place is kind of cool. And at the time, it was one of the better open mics. I don't know what's going on right now, but it was a good one.
Yeah, I don't know. So what's the name of the YouTube channel?
Oh, it's all just my name. It's Justin Longoria, and that's JUSTNLONGORIO. All one word. And you search that and you can find it. I'm the only one in the world, apparently. I looked it up on a website that claims to have that information, and it said that there is one or fewer of me with my name, so I'm easy to find. It's all Justin Longoria. And I got Bandcamp, I've got YouTube. I am on Spotify but just one album, and it was the most recent thing. It's called Disappointosaurus, and it lived up to its name. In every sense of the word.
What's the Bandcamp?
The same. It's all Justin Longoria. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I guess it's Bandcamp /
JUSTN.
Yes.
Without the I.
Without the I.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I started in the MySpace days and thought I'd make my band name a screen name thing. So
nice.
It's carryover from that, and so all that stuff is locked into it. I guess I could change it. I don't know.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Check out Justin's music on YouTube, Spotify, and Bandcamp.
Yes. Awesome.